Short material and then front order. Big movers are coming Friday.
I like to.
Yeah. When's the get here?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my body tells me that.
It was supposed to have been finished a couple of days ago, but he's short of box material, so until I get that box in. Well, let's say if we get the box tomorrow, he can be finished. You know, tomorrow's Wednesday, he can be finished on Thursday.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm getting my.
Is it the pergola?
it's it's a hard, yeah, it's an engineered hardwood floor. The hand straight look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty. How's business?
Doing pretty good. Yeah. Sold my estimated listing finally after 80 days.
8 days.
80.
Oh, 80 days.
Yeah. But I was talking to the sellers. I knew the husband. I never met the wife until this weekend. I met him at the signing. And she said when they bought this house 2 or 3 years ago, it was number 75 days. So it's just estimators.
Yeah, estimators.
But, so everybody signed early. We moved the closing date from the 7th to tomorrow, but everybody's all signed. Title is everything. So instantaneous funding.
Awesome.
Trying to get my Walton listing sold. It's a pre-foreclosure status. So we've got till the 17th. We went pending 4 days in, and then a week later we get back out. Too much comfortable doing moving and selling mothers. Right, exactly. And there was just too much to do.
Right.
Right. All the adult, all the children live there. All the children. And upstairs, it's like kind of like a master suite. It's got its own bedroom, living room, bathroom upstairs. But that's wrong. I know they're say children, but they're adults. And they smoke a lot of weed up there, and so it stinks.
Yeah.
No more smoking up there. I mean, that's the biggest thing everyone says when they walk out of there. I like the house, but I was so I told them not to put CSP stuff, which I won't do it. And the wood carpet needed to be replaced. The smell has to. So all the tubs of TSP, there's also some paint that'll seal it. I might need to spend the money and have the kids pick it downstairs to visit.
So they're still living up there.
Yeah. So they smoke outside now. Yeah, exactly.
That's tough, isn't it? I mean, it's tough to tell them that.
Yeah, that's no problem telling them. I said, look, man, you got to do this because this is the biggest complaint people have. They love everything else. They love the kids.
Every weekend, did all that. Are they going to make some money?
They'll make $50,000 if we get this. They'll pay off everything they need, and they'll come out with $50,000. So we
Motivate.
Yeah, so we need to be a little bit less price on it. Because after the first inspection, we found out there's more issues than he realized.
Well, over the weekend.
Siding issues on one side of the house that he kind of knew about. Apparently the roof is near the outside.
So
The roof is near the outside.
never mind.
Oh, yeah.
But
So while I was leaving you a voicemail, I was leaving you a voicemail. He called Eric and said, "Hey, it's working."
it's a great neighborhood. It's quiet. Everything is listed at $49.9, and that's rather than $485. It's not fixed. So it's not a price to get some action. With allowing the back then.
Where's the address area?
Someone left their charger.
It's south of Sanger.
Okay.
It's on
The gal from cross
it's
country.
end of a cul-de-sac. Everything's perfect. It damn smells. And whatever happens, we can get an offer in, and they get an inspection. They never negotiated inspections. They were just like, no. It went live. It went live on just before Mother's Day weekend. So that kind of was like, nah. We had some traffic. We had like 10 people through for Saturday and Sunday. And it went to contract, and so we were pending the next week, and then on Sunday night, all times they're like, no, we're gonna back out. Where's the negotiation? But they're listing, the buying agent kind of has like a flair for dramatics. It's like, the inspector said there was evidence of rodent activity, and she made it sound like there was a colony of rodents living in there. He went to crawl space, he's like, there was 2 droppings, and
Yeah, that's in every house.
Yeah, and he said a little bit of insulation was pulled out, but it's taken care of. But she made it sound like there was like a, fucking.
She must be a newbie.
No, she's been, I think about 4 years, but it really sucks because he knew without representation, and I offered, said I can represent you both, or I can give you a referral. So yeah, give me a referral, so I gave him the agent's name, and then he came in with somebody else, and like, I couldn't capture that.
Good morning. Hello.
Somebody that smokes weed.
Yeah, right. Family.
I can't believe we had this many people turn out after a holiday. It was uncertain, so thank you for being here. It's good to see you. Everybody have a nice holiday?
Yeah.
Good. Who's here for the first time? Is this your first meeting, Adrian?
Yes.
Adrian joined us last week.
Yes.
Hi, Adrian. Hi, Adrian.
301.
Yeah, well, we're like 309 or something.
Wow.
Actually,
Nice work.
Derek's been busy.
Good job, Derek.
And you're boarding 2 today. 4 people registered over the weekend and 2 boarding. So you were the newest one for a couple hours.
Oh, nice. That's fantastic.
So, no, there. That's okay. Any other, is Mayor Speck here? I don't see them, I don't see them. I'm going to do a little bit different today than we normally do. Have a couple things I'll go over. The first thing I want to go over is to make you aware that yesterday was Nikki Keller's birthday. And tomorrow is Derek's. So, all together now.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mr. Derek. Happy birthday to you.
That was the first thing. So I'm going to go over a few things that I want to touch on just briefly and quickly. And then we're going to have the FHA CU is scheduled to start at 11:30. I was uncertain how many people we'd have here, and one thing I'm going to go over here, I was dealing with it this morning, so my preparation was limited, so I'm going to use what I was working on this morning with an agent. But it works out really good for this FHA class to start when I'm done in about next 30 minutes or so. So Lori Manley and Eric Kroll will take over and start talking about FHA loans, which I think is good to be aware of.
So just real quick on that, it is a repeat of the FHA class. If you took it before, again, we thought things might be lighter today, right? So if you took it before, you wouldn't be getting another credit hour.
Call it something different, Kim.
You're certainly welcome.
Part 2.
You're certainly welcome to stay and ask questions. The reason we decided to repeat this one is in almost we get questions related to FHA.
And there's a lot of you that weren't here for that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we just, she called it
sounds
something
familiar
different.
when you were at the last one.
If you were at the last one, it sounds like it's different enough that you'll get credit for it. And you'll still get credit. Yeah. We know how to work the system. Oh, I'm on camera. I'm on camera, yeah. So, basically, we're going to start when I'm done with my little topics here. So yeah, it'll be part of this meeting will be that. So you won't have to wait till 11:30 for that. You're going to get it. Okay? And this really just more logistics and timing and just for many things. So, but thank you for being here. It's good to have you. Just thank you for those that were here at our party. Oh my gosh, we had 120 people here at kind of at once.
It was awesome.
It was really good. Thank you very much. And I think we raised $1,500 or so, $1,500 or $600 for more gives, which was nice. And more to follow on that. And the website's almost done, and more will be released on that soon. So thank you for your support. And again, thank you for being here. I mean, without the agents, we have no head count, right? Without the agent count, we have no staff, right? Because we don't need the staff to manage people. So we all, as a staff, thank the agents for joining and being here. So we really appreciate it. Derek ran out. I think I embarrassed him. Kind of a softie. Yeah. Did you have anything, Denise, you want to talk about? Nikki, anything to bring up? No. Just a reminder, log your referrals and SkySlope under commissions. We're not duplicating and redoing checks. It's always, we're processing a lot of checks, especially for the next 7 to 10 days, where most of the checks for a month come in. And if the commissions aren't logged correctly, it does create quite a bit of work. Just a quick second. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes just to reiterate that, we get checks sometimes with no way to identify who it belongs to whatsoever. It just has a company that wrote it, they check, and it shows up for an amount, and that's it. No property, no agent, no on either side, no reference. And those become kind of difficult. But if we're aware of what you're expecting from the referral forms and things, we can kind of reverse engineer it a bit to save some time. That's why we had to send the email a while ago. We still have BPO checks no one's claimed. Several $100s of BPO checks. Just yeah, I'll take it. Well, actually, we'll go to more gives at some point. That's what we're going to do with it. So. You're from March. You think someone would want them, but yeah, you get it.
Yeah. So should we also do the additional referral form? There was an additional form to fill out for inter-office and.
Yeah. So inside of Back Agent, just show you really quick. I'm sorry. Where'd that come from? We used Back Agent 4 years ago. Right? So inside of Basecamp, under More Realty HQ, Docs, Links, and Info. I can hear myself breathing. I like it. There is an intra office. What does intra mean? Within is internal, or inter office referral form. They're not in order for some reason, but you're sending to another firm. So there's 2 different forms. I think I can move these now. So there's one for within the agency if you're sending a referral amongst yourselves, or there's one if you're sending a referral to someone else outside the company. What happens if you have an agent in another company wanting to send you a referral? Which form do you use? Neither. They should be sending you their form. Right? And so many times we have people saying, hey, so-and-so at Keller wants to send me a referral. What form do I use? Theirs. They should be the one originating that to send to you because they're the ones who are creating the agreement. You're agreeing to it, right? So.
Wouldn't it be helpful though, Nikki, if that, let's say someone from an outside company wants to send a referral and they don't for a long time, and you get a check like what she's looking for now. If I was looking at it, I'd say, hey Nikki, I'm expecting a check from Keller Williams, you know.
Yep, and you should have a form.
Okay.
And in a minimum, in SkySlope, you can create a referral transaction. In the checklist, just all you do is upload the referral form. That's all that's required. So if you actually want to go to SkySlope and track a little cleaner by agent, by either individual or property, you can actually go create a SkySlope file and just pick up the referral only checklist and just load the referral, and that's it. It's approved, right? And then at least we have somewhere to start on some of it. Or you can send an email to accounting, yeah, hey, here, just a heads up, I don't know how this is gonna come to you, but I have this referral coming my way, which is really helpful. And if you knew a rough amount or an area, anything would be very, very helpful. The referral form's the best. Does that answer your question, by the way? Yes. I just, sometimes I get drifting. Okay. Over the weekend, I had a transaction come in, or an agent question come in. That said, I'm going to touch on the one that, Melissa, that you and I were talking to. We had an agent that had a client that wanted to terminate a transaction. Wrote an offer a week ago. Earnest money deposit was due Wednesday at 5. And the client decided, I want to terminate. 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the agent notified the other agent by phone saying, we're going to terminate. I don't have the forms yet, but we're going to terminate. Is that a termination?
No.
It is. You need to be aware that they can go back active again right now. So you represent, it's as if the client is speaking when you speak. So if you make a phone call like that, it absolutely can be interpreted as that termination. So you need to be very, very careful with that. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm glad we brought that up. So when you terminate, just be aware. Don't call and say we're thinking of terminating. Don't ever do that. You just go, and if either send the form, and if you don't have time, you make the phone call, and so the form's coming your way as soon as you get signatures. And then away you go. So this is on Tuesday. Earnest money deposit was due at 5 p.m. that day. So deposit clearly wasn't made. Does it what up? We've never received disclosures, and we had a sewer scope. That's all that was in play, and they said, I just don't want the house. Can they terminate and get their money back?
Yes.
Yes. Who says yes? Who says no? I'm just trying to trick you. Right? Yeah. They can get it back. Why can they get it back? Mona. Why can they get it back? Go ahead and let's just talk it through. Why are they allowed to get it back?
Well, they never deposited it.
Never deposit the money. So if they don't deposit the money by 5, is that a breach of contract? And could that terminate the contract? Yes. So you be aware that deposit time frames are very important, because if you go past that 5 p.m., the seller can interpret that and terminate the transaction based upon that. So if there's backup offers in place and you miss that deadline, there's a likelihood possible that they will terminate that transaction, and you're just out of luck because you missed the condition, you missed the term, right? What other reasons are they? Remember what I said earlier, what we've done. And
They hadn't received the disclosures.
Hadn't received the disclosures. Once you receive the disclosures, we have what?
5 days.
5 days to review those. And can I terminate? You get a full refund?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Do I have to give a reason?
No.
Nope. Okay, we had a sewer scope. So that's an inspection. We had an inspection, right? We submitted unconditional, the next day we submitted the termination and unconditional approval of the property. Just to follow up to make sure, but as I said, it's okay with that. Actually, I'm going to pause my screen here because I'm going to read. Yeah, so the termination was sent on the same day. The following day was unconditional approval for everybody's records, so we just had something, right? So we've got inspections, we got deposit, we've got all kinds of reasons why. I'm going to pause my screen because I do not want to embarrass this other agent. I'm going to pull it up here and just read it. Here's what the agent, so our agent said, hey, I just spoke with my PB. He said to have just send the termination over the buyer. Actually, had not yet deposit money, so it's really not an issue, because the agent had said on the other side said, we're not going to release the deposit. It wasn't made, right? My client wants a deposit. First of all, is that seller entitled to that deposit?
Yes.
No, the seller's not entitled to it because the buyer's terminated for all these right reasons. Can the seller claim that deposit? Is the seller likely to win and get that deposit? They're not, because the buyer's terminating within all these contingency timeframes, right? Seller's now saying, we're going to keep the deposit. Okay, first of all, you don't get to keep it. If there's a dispute, you have to work it out, right? You're just going to take it, first of all. Second of all, we never made it. So I said, just reply back to the agent saying, well, just send the termination over when you want, because the deposit's not an issue because we never made it. Right? So The agent replied back saying, you did call me about your client's terminating, but you told me it was because your clients got cold feet. I was not notified until the following day that your clients wanted to terminate based on the unconditional disapproval. Technically, the earnest money deposit should have been deposited. At the time, on Wednesday, the 22nd, you expressed to me that your clients were getting cold feet yet again. Your clients should really offer some kind of compensation for their wrongful actions. That is one of the main purposes of earnest money, so your people are not making offers without sincere earnest. Does that hold any water?
No.
Is this,
Well, they don't even, like.
what wrongful actions did this buyer commit?
None.
None. You only, if they did anything, they didn't make the deposit by 5. But they told her at 2, we're going to terminate. And by not depositing, really, it can do one of 2 things. You can just negate the contract, but there are ways in there if some seller wants to get squirrely and go to small claim to try and get it, they can. But who does? If it's not been made. I've never seen that happen. I've seen disputes go to small claims when something has been deposited. When I read through the lines there, they're mad because had there been a deposit made, we'd be trying to keep it. So it's a good thing we didn't make it, right? Because that's what I read between the lines there. Is, dang it, now we can't try and take advantage of you. If you go to small claims court, which is where this ultimately would be resolved in some sort of court thing, you would have provided, look, here's my termination, here's this. I never received the disclosures. The disclosures say this. Would they have been awarded their deposit? The likelihood is like way above 90%. You never know with a judge, but it's way above 90% that the buyer would have been awarded the deposit. So she says, what do I say? So I told her, I wrote this for her, and I had her send it. Actually, I got to make it bigger to run my glasses. I'll turn my screen share back on. You hear like hissing or really that one speaker still. We might have to replace that. This is what I had her send the agent. I wrote it for her. Whoops. Does that work? Regardless of the reason for termination, the buyers were within more than one contingency time frame to terminate and would have received a full refund deposit had one been made. The buyers could have just delayed it no longer by terminating once we received the property disclosure. For example, or after further inspections, but they wanted to let your client know as soon as possible so your client could go active on the market again. There was no foul play, as you suggest. Sorry, it didn't work out. I wrote that for us and the other agent, so it kind of covers our bases. But what's the so what of all kind of this? What time have we got here? Really, the so what of this? Be careful what you're saying, verbally or in writing, between the parties, because they can be taken very literally. And in her email that she wrote to the other agent, I just said, look, just tell them the deposit's not an issue. We never made it. Thank you. Sorry. That's all I said. But she wrote the story. And we talked that through. And she's not going to do that. You don't need to do that. You don't have to tell a story. Just settle facts. Right? Be very, very clear and to the point in communication, because anything in writing can show up where? Court. Can what you say show up in court? Not harder, right? Well, he said this. Well, no, I didn't. It's called hearsay. I mean, so it's kind of much harder to prove. But if I print up an email, well, you just said all this. Is that evidence?
Yes.
That's irrefutable evidence, right? So you have to be very, very careful what you put in writing. Now, there's no risk here. I'm not worried about it. The worst thing that could happen is the seller gets weird and tries to go after the deposit was never made. That's kind of a worst case scenario here. Excuse me. I see people taking pictures of this. If you want a copy, I can put it out there if you need it. But so I wanted to show you this. This is, you just want to just passionately express yourself. The most passion I had in here. Actually, this is starting. I don't have it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So many times in real estate, you want to tell a story in your addendums and in communication. You don't need to do that. You can have an attorney. You can have a client letter written for buyers. That's fine. But when you communicate back and forth, it's best just to be to the point and factual, and not let your passions get run amok. The most passionate I got here in this email was there was no no foul play as you suggest. But I want to type a whole lot more. Are you kidding me? You know what you're doing. I mean, I could have, I mean, seriously, good luck with that. I mean, I could have gotten really snarky in this letter, but there's nothing gained by doing that. Right? You just want to be professional and in a way, where appropriate, dispassionate, where appropriate, passionate, but usually in correspondence within a transaction like this is dispassionate. You can have all the passion you want behind the scenes. You can be as angry as you want, yelling at your computer, but when you type, you got to turn that filter. That filter's got to be in place, way in place. Otherwise, go back and bite you. Okay? And it can be twisted and turned any way you want. Well, you said this, you said that. Does it? Well, okay. I mean, it can get really squirrely. So anyway, does that make sense? So first of all, our agent, what they could have done better has not been so forthcoming. I think they're getting cold feet. That shouldn't have been a communication probably ahead of time. But I understand it. I'm just letting you know that I'm not sure this is going to work out. I get that. And there's nothing actually wrong with that, right? But you kind of run a little bit of a risk that someone said, well, you said, but technically, contractually, it doesn't matter what I said. Here's the forms.
Yeah.
Where's my disclosures? We could have waited for the disclosures and just delayed it. I could have got disclosures and waited my 5 days and terminate. I didn't want. That's not fair. We want to let your clients know as soon as possible. The other thing you have to keep in mind when you communicate to the other side, it can be taken as the client's communicating. I'm terminating. Is that good enough for them to go back on the market? It kind of is. It can be interpreted that way. It's implied that that's okay. Now, is it better to do it all in writing? Hey, I'm sending this document over to you. It'll be there within the hour. I'm just letting you know that it's coming your way. That's totally appropriate and probably good. But you might want to get that paperwork underway, hit send for signatures, and then if you're going to do it, you call the agent. But sometimes it's better to call the agent and say, hey, look, just letting you know. I just emailed this to you. Now, what if we bump up against a time frame like this? I think it's okay, because now you get deposit due at 5. Just letting you know we're terminating so you can move back. But probably what I would have said is, so the deposit's not going to be made. But I would have done it in writing, not in a phone call. And I would have been dispassionate and said, just letting you know, putting together termination, but this is our official email letting you know to go back active in the market, we're done. I'm just waiting for signature, I'll pass it on to you. And deposit will not be made because this is at a deposit deadline. Thank you. The risk here for this other agent, this seller, is so low, it's almost imperceptible, honestly. But it's a teaching moment, right? That's all I'm using it for. It's just a teaching moment to maybe just understand and kind of, I like to use these situations here so you can kind of see the real world thing. Well, here's why I use these things. When I was 9 years old, my mom and dad dropped me off my Uncle Dairy Farm in Preston, Idaho. Preston, Idaho is famous for Napoleon Dynamite, if you ever want to and I was 9, this summer I turned 10, and so I was almost 10, and I was all excited about the opportunity to drive something, because I totally get to drive something. So we're out about a half mile from the yard or the house, and my uncle says, would you take that truck back to the house? I said, sure. I ran and got in the truck, and I'm looking like, and he's gone. I'm 10. And I had one of those, it was a 1970 GMC beater truck with the clutch that was tight as can be.
Yeah.
I mean, it had a clutch, right? So I'm like, all these pedals and knobs, and like, I have a tune left. But I figured it out. And then my uncle kept doing that to me throughout my 4 or 5 summers there. He just dropped me on a combine and say, combine the field, like, okay, and trying to figure it out. That's how he taught me, right? So in a like way, this situation are the best teaching things because of the things you see and you kind of build upon them. That's why we do that. Not it's just a kind of a memory lane thing about the truck. That's kind of gives you the sheds light of why I like to use those. I like to use those as teaching moments for all of you in case you come across. Anyway, so just be clear, be brief. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there times we should record a phone call like that?
You have to let people know you are recording it.
Okay.
Say, hey, I just want you to know I'm recording this phone call. Otherwise, you can't. I don't think if there's an attorney here, but I don't think you can bring it to court with you. But if you want to record a phone call so you can remember what you said, that's one thing. But I don't know if you recorded it, you could use it later.
I mean, just because, like, I mean, they could say, oh yeah, he called me to ask me about the weather. He didn't actually call me about this deal.
Yeah, and you get crazy with that. Yeah. What you need to remember is what matters is what's in writing. So you kind of look at it from the opposite, put the hat on forward instead of backward on that. And think about what I want to be recorded is going to be in writing. What I want to really matter is in writing. The recording of conversations and whatever, I mean, where does that end? It's best, writing is best. And I had a, Jane had a, I could have easily used that one, Jane. We could go on for an hour on that. We had a transaction last week where they wrote an offer, some daughter's property, and I can't even remember how we got there, but all of a sudden the PB is emailing me because he's not getting the answers he wants, basically, from everybody else, and he's not liking the addendum. And so what he did, I know what I can show you. We did write an addendum because there's something on the forest. Jane Davies. Find it quick, Jane. That last week, Jane? Find it really quick. So I can scroll through quick enough so you don't see who I'm talking about.
While you're looking for that, Paul, one of the things you're talking about putting in writing and being free at, right? You can write what you really want to write.
I do it on Word doc.
Yeah. And then the second thing is have somebody who knows you to run stuff by. So like for me, that's Melanie, right? And so I'll ask her all the time, is this bitchy enough but not too bitchy? Right? Because I don't want to come across as it doesn't matter and I don't care and I'm not mad, but on the other hand, I don't want it to be counterproductive, right? So have somebody who knows you that you can run it by before you hit send.
There's a famous letter Lincoln wrote that was very scathing to a general that he never wrote, but he felt better writing it. But it's recorded somewhere, but he just got it off his chest. If you're gonna do that, don't put it in an email. Because sometimes I'll just put it in a Word doc and get your thoughts. I always write my emails, no, not always, but most of my emails are written in a Word doc and I copy paste over. Because I don't want them to go out.
Just however you can't accidentally send them. So you can hit reply, but take their name out of the two.
So at 3 o'clock, last day of inspection, this transaction sent over a repair addendum that we rejected. It had all this stuff on it, right? We rejected it. And we sent this back, a repair addendum, because on here it talked about a $4,000 credit for spraying some timberland. It's not really a repair item, and it's $4,000 bucks. We don't even know if that's what it cost. So we were not going to address it then. So we pulled everything you see here was condensed down into my clarity of just these words, right? So she took this many words to say that, basically, and then we separate on it so the repairs are addressed, and then sent them a second addendum that said this, but it came back with this on it. Okay, so here's the question, it may be obvious, is that okay?
No, absolutely not.
Why?
Because you can't add to an addendum. You have to create a new addendum over that to
Good.
establish your.
Very good, but why? There's a reason why.
It's illegal.
It's not illegal.
Well, you can't tell when they did it, or.
You're not gonna get arrested, so it's not illegal, right? But does it, so what I replied to the agent on the other side, and I basically said, look, thank you for your addendums. We're not gonna address this, as we said, we're not gonna address this point. And by the way, you can't add things to our addendum because you do one of two things. You've created a counteroffer, which we can accept or reject in its entirety, which means the thing's null and void, or you've put a non-binding element to the form. And he said, well, you guys can just initial it as binding. I said, yeah, but we're not going to. Why not? Don't agree to it. Don't ever do this. Because you create either, it could be interpreted as a counter, or it can be interpreted as just a non-binding thing and it's not binding. When you put that on there, something like that, and put initials on it, it is contract 101. It's not, I know someone said legal, illegal. It's not a matter of legal. Illegal means you're going to get arrested, right? That's a crime. But is it go against contract? Contract 101, yes. Does it kind of, it's not even valid. So why do it? They should have sent either what? Did you have Mona?
Well, doesn't it say, I don't know if it says it in the addendum, but in the original sales agreement, doesn't it say that if you're going to add anything, it has to be on a separate addendum? You can't add this. I can't remember the wording, but I think it's there.
It might be, but it's also contract 101. This is not binding. So now he's panicked. Like, wait a minute. You're not going to initial? Why would we? We're not going to initial that. Now he's all back in the corner and getting all freaked out.
So just to clarify, if you sign the addendum, though, the addendum that he
signed is now binding, but the part that he added to it is not binding, so he's technically agreed to everything we have.
And that's what we told him. I said,
Right.
however, because you signed it, our interpretation is you've agreed to everything, but we don't agree to that.
Right.
But then he replied back and said, well, you said it could be a counter. I said, that's not how we choose to interpret it. How do you interpret it? He never responded. And then I do a little looking to find out his entire office, one transaction in 12 months. Well, we do like 200 a month. I mean, so who sees more? So it makes sense. But so he's kind of from the old school, thinking that's kind of what you do. That's how you counter. And that's not a counter, but it could be interpreted as one. I could have interpreted it and said, look, we know you signed this, but because you added that, we interpret it as null and void. So now what you've done is you put yourself in a bad situation where this can be interpreted one of two ways. It's not clear. But had they signed this or rejected it and added, sent back another addendum with that addition, and we signed that, that's clear, right? So you're right. It could be interpreted as a counter, which means you've rejected this, or it can interpret it as a non-binding element. But we chose in writing, we said we interpret it as you've agreed to everything but that. But I could have easily said, we interpret this as non-binding, redo it. This is not underway, this is not part of the transaction. We could have done that, but we wanted these things in place. So we just said, well, we choose to interpret it that way. That's the danger of doing this, because now you leave it open to interpretation. It's not clear. What does that mean, open to interpretation?
Can of worms, here we go.
That means I interpret it one way, you interpret it another way. I guess we better see what a judge interprets it as, right? It's open to how they see it, right? So you don't want that. But so anyway, my point here is it's amazing how often this goes on out there. Don't do it. Yes.
So how would you actually fix that so that it's correct? I mean, now
What he should have done is his blunder, right?
Right, he should have done the addendum, but I'm saying now that it's done like this, how do you want to do it?
You don't. We just said this is everything's binding but that. But that line that you added is not binding because we don't agree to it. Well, why not? Because we don't want to. When we put it on there, don't you just need it initially? But we're not going to.
I wonder if this is the same company that actually sent back a purchase and sales agreement with changes on the purchase and sales
You'd
agreement.
be surprised how often you see that.
Could not believe
if you see
it.
that,
Could not believe it.
if you see that, just reduce the changes to an addendum or a counteroffer. Excuse me, a counteroffer. He should have just rejected it and wrote a counter. That's what he should have done. So don't do it. We don't like seeing that. And sometimes when you add things, if you write an offer and do it in zip forms and add things later on your own out of DigiSign, you use different type fonts. And it's kind of hard to know when that was added or not, or was added later. So
That's
when
not
you,
even an inspection addendum, is it?
no, it's just an addendum because it's not. So we agreed to it. So he sent back the repair sign.
Yeah.
They agreed to the repairs. We said, great, thank you. And you agreed to our terms on this, but we don't agree to yours. Neither. And then he was also scheduling repairs or scheduling site visits without permission of the seller. And he's calling vendors that the seller already talked to. Is messy. There's a grant in place on this, potential grant for the springs. It could be like $8,000. So you got this other agent calling these people over the grant. You're like, wait a minute, who are you? Well, maybe this grant won't apply. And if that grant doesn't get to go through for the seller, guess who's on the hook for it? That realtor. Just for meddling in their stuff and messing it up. The seller could then eventually go back and say, look, you screwed up my $7,000 grant. Pay up. Anyway, it was just, we were chasing this guy all over. Stop it. Anyway, so a couple transactions I want to show you, but just remind you, don't ever do that. If you do, I hate to even say that. It's not binding unless all parties at least initial by it.
Plus, there's not even a date on the signature, on this initial, so they could have been added at a later date. There's nothing even binding it to prior to.
Unless our sellers put their initials next to it, it means nothing. That literally means nothing. It may not even be there. So I don't know if any of this helps or it's instructive, but just the things you were. Jane, where are we at on that? You moving forward?
Well, I wanted him to put things in writing that he had canceled the site visit.
Yeah.
I did get an email that he has canceled that. It was supposed to happen today. So we are going forward. And
But we had to tell him to back off. Yeah. Because he's out there doing things he shouldn't be doing.
anything that they sign where it says time and date, they never put a time. And I have problem with that on the repair addendum and these important documents.
Yeah.
It only
Like right,
has the date,
right here, fire, just date, no time.
no time.
So technically, if these sellers wanted to be dipsticks, or wanted to be, not, that's not the right, they wanted to be difficult, it's probably a better way to say it, they could say, well, we don't want to sign, we don't agree to do this stuff. You're taking the home as is, because there's no time. So they had a deadline, you have till 5 o'clock.
And I
To
didn't
agree.
get it
On the
until
day.
6.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's no
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah.
Now, we could trace emails, delivery, and things like that if we wanted to. But when it says date and time are really important.
Well, technically, she didn't get it till 6 days past that deadline, because delivery is when it's
Yeah.
important. It doesn't matter, she didn't get it till 6, it's,
Do you know when you got it? Was it 6?
it's 5
I
months
could
to
see
deadline.
from the time that she sent me the email,
Yeah,
and it was 6 o'clock.
so they,
Yeah.
they missed the deadline.
They missed the deadline, so technically they could be difficult on that. But they don't, they just want to sell the house.
Right, gotcha.
They want to move on, right? You know what I mean?
But it's a good thing to tuck in your little box to remember in case things go south.
Not only do words matter, but so do it's time. Date and time matters a lot.
Yeah, well, she has proof it came in at 6.
Yeah. But now we're 5 or 6 days past that. There's kind of implied that we kind of agreed to it. So it becomes more difficult at that time. But anyway, so just some things.
I'm going to the appraisal right
Oh yeah, so she's had nothing crazy like that. So any other questions on these couple items? I love teaching these because I learn every week, and we go through things every week, and this is kind of the fun part of the job, is navigating this and trying to keep things in check and trying to hold together and trying to protect people. It's really kind of fun to me. So that's what you get a lot in this training.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
But on this one though too, it's like, how come the listing agent really hasn't educated his seller?
Because the
on-
listing agent doesn't know.
the
The listing agent never should have sent that email that there should be some sort of damages for your wrongful actions.
Yeah.
That just shows how little you know as a realtor.
Seems like the principal broker's a little behind the time too. Just saying.
So the number one,
And they've
so
never seen
the agency principal broker probably never saw it. There's most of the things we never see.
Yeah.
But if you need help, just let us know. We'd rather you reach out and say, can I have a little guidance how to word this? And so many times we take this and pare it down to this. That's usually what you can do. So the agency said, gosh, it's been like 2 years ago, the number one problem in real estate is principal brokers who are not trained. Not agents, principal brokers who don't know how it all works. And here's 2 people in these that don't know what the rules are. Why would you even say that? That's not even applicable. It just shows what you don't know. Why would you be calling vendors outside of us to set up appointments without permission, just telling us that's what shows what you don't know? Why would you add something to the addendum? That's just, and he says, isn't okay? I said, well, it's not okay. It's non-binding. Well, just initial. I said, but we're not going to. So therefore it's non-binding. Well, why aren't they initial? They don't want it. So anyway, so any other questions or concerns, comments, anything you want to bring up?
I have one.
Yep.
What do people do here to document their texts?
You can actually email them to SkyStove. You can forward them to SkyStove.
Forward all the.
You can forward your text messages to SkyStove. You know how you can forward a text message to an email address?
Well, there's I've got an app. I was just asking rhetorically because I have an app that actually turns it into a PDF. All of them, all the dates and times. As one.
Yeah. What's the app? So you can forward your text message.
Yeah.
You can actually email your text messages to yourself. And forward that.
SMS to text.
SMS to text.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So every time I call the agency, they always hang up by saying, document, document, document. So text messages are important. I don't like communicating a transaction via text message. If it's just like, hey, inspections at 4, big deal. But if it's like we're hashing out some terms, I go to email. And this PB on James, he was really upset. I didn't call him, want to talk it through. And I said, what do we have to talk about? The client does not agree to that. We'll call him, we can talk it through. There's nothing to talk about. They don't agree. Well, okay, I can't believe you don't want to call and talk to me. No, I don't. Thank you. I just don't want to talk to you. I want it in writing, right? Because now there's no, on a for something I want to log on the transaction, it's always an email. Text messages I get, but make sure you email them to yourself and forward that to the file, or email them to the file so you have a document of that as well. Because those also become a log, right? Careful of text messages though. If the court opens up one message, you open up every message on your phone, not just that. They kind of open everything up. It's kind of weird. Anything else before I turn over some time with FHA loans? Okay, Lori, I'll just leave it on my computer. You just click forward.
Did we talk about the class tomorrow?
It's probably full, but there is a laws news. I sent it out earlier twice. If you haven't registered for that law or the tenant law changes, you better register fast because it's going to fill like within minutes now. So, but it's really, really good class. You should try it and attend if you can. Okay, so we're not stopping the meeting. We're going to keep going. There's no break in between. So just keep going.
And real quick, so this brand new FHA credit hour will be great.
So this is still our meeting. Don't walk out. If you can, our meeting's still going. Our meeting is, this is part of our meeting.
But if you've already gone to the FHA loan before.
If you've already been to the FHA class and don't want to keep going, that's fine. But just letting you know that.
Oh, that's right.
There we
go.
So on classes, so we've got this one right now. Next week, and Melissa doesn't know this yet. Actually, we talked about it, but I haven't sent it to her. We're going to do one on rates. So we all get asked, "What's your rate today?" Right? So I want you all to know how rates really work, because anybody that answers that without qualification doesn't know what they're doing, right? So that'll be next week, a week from today, after our CE, after the regular MORE meeting. Tomorrow night at 6, we're doing a home buyers class here. Okay? I think right now we have, Melissa, what, 5 that we know signed up for it? So this is our first one. We're going to start doing these monthly. And the idea behind the home buyers class, and knowing that we'll be doing them monthly, I think we're probably going to do the 3rd Wednesday at 6 p.m. and you guys will always know that that's going on. So you can just know that that's going to happen and push it to people. And I have a meeting Friday with somebody in my company back east who has this program up and running, and they get a ton of people to their home buyers class. So my vision for it is that it's a tool for you all to send clients to, but it's also a way for us collectively to bring people who want to buy homes into this building every month. So if you guys want to show up and hang out, and we can say, hey, and if you have any questions, there's a realtor here, talk to them, right? So that's my vision of how this can work, that we're just bringing people in who want to buy houses and find out.
That's great, Eric. I like that. Yeah.
But do you have a system in place if, like, say 7 of us showed up, who would end up getting the client or anything like that?
I would do what I do like with us, with loan people, with you all, and just say, talk to somebody and get your questions
Here if you
answered.
have questions.
Exactly, and I can point out who the realtors are.
But a resource for this too is if I have buyers who want to be educated, I can bring my buyers to this.
Absolutely. That's what I said. It's kind of 2-part, right? That's kind of the first thing. Both us and you that has buyers, we want to bring those people here to get them ready, right? But also, as I look at how this program's being run by this guy who's going to teach me, and I'm going to steal all his ideas, is he's just bringing people in because it's a regular thing and it's a regular cadence. All right.
And I'm sorry, what's the cadence on this?
We're going to do a monthly to begin with, and if we're packing the theater once a month, we'll do it. But if we're packing it with home buyers who are coming in here, we'll do one every night. That's probably a little aggressive.
So really, it's a resource for you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Thank you. Okay, today I'm just going to go over the specifics on FHA loans. It's actually one of my favorite programs because it's so forgiving. There we go. Okay. So what's great about it is, first of all, it's very forgiving on credit. The credit scores can go all the way down to 580 on these. And it's only 3.5% down. And that says 650. That's incorrect. It's actually 580 on the credit score. But your debt to income ratios. Do you guys know what debt to income is?
Yes.
Okay. That is very relaxed too. It can be really high. Like I've had it up to 40, 48, 49. FHAs?
Occasionally we'll get them with high credit when we run them through the AUS up to 55% debt to income ratio.
So, okay, I know what DTI means, but when you say 48, you might want to clarify
Okay.
just briefly what that.
Okay, well, on the debt to income, what we do is we add up all of the credit debt, the monthly, payments that are on their car payments and student loans, all that stuff. And we include the projected house payment. So typically on a conventional loan, we usually don't get them past 45. And on the FHA loans, like I said, we can get them, some 50, 52. So that's one of the really main things on that.
45 do represent what?
That represents all of your debt added up per month plus the house payments.
Compared to your gross, divided by your gross income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's, compared to your.
It's a percentage of your gross income.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Anyway, and then we can use non-occupant co-borrowers, which is very, very helpful too. You can get 6% seller contribution, which is usually never needed that much, but you can use that towards buying the interest rate down. So if you've got somebody that's, doesn't have much of a down payment, they can go 3.5% down. If there's room, you can adjust the sales price of the house, and you'll get, then if you can get the seller to pay some of your closing costs and prepaids, then that'll also help them buy down the interest rate. So that's one of the things about it.
Real quick,
yeah.
do you all understand that when you get seller contributions, that it can't exceed the actual prepaids and closing costs of the loan, right? So what Lori says is because it's so high on 6%, so 6% is too much, right? We can't spend 6%. And the less we buy the rate down, and then that becomes one of the prepaid and closing cost items, right? So next Tuesday, I'll show you exactly how that works. But basically, your client can use that to buy down the rate. If you can get 6%, right, we can spend it, I guess is what we're saying.
Actually, I have a quick question.
Yes.
If it's, let's say you ask 5,000 for the house, and it's fully $200, no big deal. Where did the $200 go?
It has to go back to the seller.
Okay, so the buyers don't use that $200.
Nope.
No, if it's not used, it all goes back to the seller.
Even in some cases, we're giving a lender credit, right? Any excess, we can't keep as the lender, and pay less of a lender credit. It all goes back to the seller.
So we try to use all of it, and that's why sometimes if it's set up so that the seller pays all your prepaids and closing costs, it still might end up that your buyer needs to bring in $150 or $200 because it means that threshold for that interest rate was in the middle, in order to use all of the percentage that the seller's paying. Does that make sense? Kind of not.
No, we'll help them spend their money, and then we'll show them if there's any left over or they need to bring some in.
Okay.
So ideally with this type of a program, with the seller contributions, the buyer is only going to have to bring in 3.5% if it's structured correctly. So that it really minimizes how much money that they have to bring in closing, and helps those your first-time buyers typically to get into a house a lot easier.
Well, that and then, go ahead.
So the when you're talking about the closing costs, the prepaid fees, sometimes they get confused with lender's fees and all that kind of stuff, and that's not included in there. Like the appraisal fees.
That's included in your prepaids and closing, yeah.
So the minimum is 3.5, and then but if you can get 6, it's okay. Then we can buy down.
You can use up to 6%. That's what the guidelines allow you to use up to 6%.
They have to put 3.5% down.
Yeah, that's the minimum. Yeah.
But that 3.5 can be a gift too, which this is one of the few programs that will allow 100% gift, from a family relative or whatever.
Right now, you're just talking about seller credits, which don't have to do with gifts or the down payment at all.
Right. There's
Two
the down
separate things.
payment.
3.5% is completely separate from the limits on split rate credit.
Yeah. The rules are, it has to be a primary residence. They don't do any investment properties or second homes. It has to be primary, and you can only have one FHA loan at a time. So you can't, like if you're buying a house on FHA loan, then you can't buy your next house until this one's sold. But you know, but you can rent it out and still do just a different type of loan. They do renovation, and for you guys that were here last week, the gal, what was her name that came to Marquita came in and went over to the renovation type of loan that ended up being really good. So
On the condos, be careful. You all probably know this. A lot of agents somehow don't know this. If it's not on the FHA approved condo list, you cannot do an FHA loan.
yeah, and we've got a we can look it up on the website to see if it's approved FHA or not. The appraisals are a little bit different. They're a little bit more restrictive as far as the appraiser has to be FHA approved, and it has to be an FHA appraisal. It's completely different than a conventional appraisal. So you can't take a conventional appraisal and switch it over to FHA. That's why we need to have it all set up when we do all the order outs and stuff. But they're mainly concerned about safety issues. So as far as like I've seen it, where there's the railing was not tight against the wall on the on the stairs going up and down. So a lot of that stuff they're really careful about.
Don't be afraid of an FHA appraisal. Really, I get sometimes they don't want to take an offer because it's FHA. Don't be that listing agent, right? Peeling paint is the only thing that I see ever that's different from a conventional and an FHA appraiser or appraisal. So, yeah.
We had a major fixer-upper, and the FHA appraiser called out nothing.
So
I had our handyman agent go out to look at the job, and he's like, "It's too much for me." The appraisal was after that, and they called out nothing.
So
don't expect.
Yeah, I just it used to be that it was a lot different, right? And it is it takes a different license for the appraiser, but don't be afraid of an FHA or a VA appraisal.
Yeah.
That's new. Something's changed.
Yeah.
New within the last 10 years. I mean, 20 years ago there was a difference, but the last 10 years, that peeling paint is the only thing different that I see called out.
I saw one where the roof was beyond shot, and I was sweating bullets because I thought the FHA appraiser would call it out and didn't even look at the roof. It's like, what? I mean, yeah, right. That was just like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And here's a couple items that are required for FHA appraisers.
And everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Right. So make sure this is installed, strapped in the water heater, carbon monoxide alarm. Costs about what, $40–50 at Lowe's or Home Depot. So
Not even.
yeah.
Keep them in your trunk.
Yeah.
I got mine.
It's across the street.
Yeah, I got them in my trunk.
Yeah.
So
Or tell your client what
perfect.
you need with.
Right. But don't be the listing agent that doesn't have those in their listing, right? And we don't know until the appraisal comes back, and the appraiser makes it subject to, and once they mark subject to, they've got to do a reinspection. So somebody's paying $125 to $150, and we've just added 4 days to the transaction.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
So
Sorry,
the one different thing on the FHA loan is it's the 1.75 upfront fee, but it's financed into the loan amount, and that's why you'll see on when you're looking at like an FHA disclosure, you'll see that it has the sales price, and then they're 3.5% down, and if you're looking at those numbers, you're going, well, that's not 3.5% down, that's not the loan amount. But what we do is we add 1.75 back into the loan amount, so your loan amount's going to be a bit higher. And the reason that they do it that way is to make it easier on the borrowers as a monthly payment, because that reduces their monthly payment. The monthly payment is still 0.85, and it does not go away on FHA loans. But like I said, I mean, the FHA loans, it's honestly one of my favorite loans because of the fact that it's so lenient. I mean, it gets people into homes, gets them building equity, and having their house payments made on time, builds their credit. So that's an example of a FICO score of 650 to show that their monthly mortgage insurance would be about $203 based on a $300,000 purchase, and so in the upfront MI or mortgage insurance is 14,272.
So real quick, and sorry I keep stepping on Laura's toes on this, I wrote this one eventually, so I've got a little more what I was trying to show on this. So FHA, if you have a borrower that's a first-time borrower, right, so they haven't owned a home, and either of the borrowers on the loan haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, they can put 3% down with conventional loan, right? So 3% down. There are still cases where that's true. There are many cases where we would go FHA. And the reason we would go FHA is it's much more forgiving on the debt to income ratio, right? So if their ratios are tight. But the second is when we get down to credit scores that aren't high, conventional kills you on the MI and on the rate. FHA does not. So everybody in FHA gets the 0.85 monthly MI factor. So I picked this rate when I put this together, or excuse me, this credit score, because this is somebody who's likely going to end up in an FHA loan because of this. Nearly $200 a month different in the mortgage insurance because of that credit score. If this credit score was 780, right, and they were a first-time buyer, we would be putting them in a conventional loan.
What would MI be roughly on that? It's not 14,000 on the 780 credit score?
No. So it's much less. This would be, and you bring up a great point, Paul. I should have had the notes here. I remembered it last time. This is so when we price mortgage insurance, we put in the loan scenario, right? And so it's looking at how much you're putting down, right? So if you put on a conventional loan, if you put 10, 15% or 5% down, the MI factor is better than 3% down. And then the other factor is a credit score. So this is probably, I don't know what that is, it's probably like a 1.6 something MI factor. If they had a 780, they'd probably be at like a 0.9.
So closer to that.
So much closer to that, right? Without adding this to it up front. Gotcha. Or their upfront would probably be closer to 6,000, and then they just pay it at closing, and they don't have the monthly at all.
Gotcha. And then you can wrap in seller contributions for that.
We can use seller contributions, right? So this is where, we can always spend the money, right? We can do upfront MI, we can buy the rate down. There are lots of things we can do to spend.
Unconventional sales limit to 3% of seller contribution.
No, it's not always 3% though, is it? There are some yes, 3%. I think there's a caveat, but I don't remember it. So yes, 3%. And again, that's a lot of money, right? If you guys get 3%, good for you.
What are you saying is 3%?
Seller contributions on conventional.
Oh, is typical limit? Oh.
Well, it's not going to be more than that on a conventional. 3% is going to be everything.
Right. And that's where it gets tough to spend anyway.
Working on one, the lender was saying it's
And there's
FHA or VA?
oh, FHA. Yeah.
Okay.
FHA. Okay.
So what they're saying is when you go for contributions from a buyer, you say, well, what are our loan costs? Well, a good rule of thumb on loan cost on a conventional is about 3%.
Right.
That's why it's really not more than 3, because with every contribution you got, it's going to be roughly around 3.
I typically like to call the lender though to ask what basically the full amount is, because like you said, if they don't end up using the 3% and you ask for 3%, then that buyer loses that additional.
You got to make sure you word it correctly. Any leftover goes toward purchase price, or whatever goes toward furniture, or whatever.
And I don't mind that, except that. So I get that call all the time, right? How much is it going to be? And so if you call me, I'm going to say, figure about $5,000 to $7,000 depending on purchase price and property taxes.
Because I know sometimes to a seller, it looks better to give them an amount
right.
rather than saying 3%.
Right. I typically do a dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
And for a like normal price house, 7,000 is usually right. What we don't know and where we have to go, I can always tell you what our cost is. On every loan, we charge you $1,450. Everything else is the third-party cost, or dictated on the month that you close and the amount of reserves that we have. All those other things. So it's not a question that I can just say it's this.
Right.
So I can say who's the title company, what are the taxes, when are we closing, and I can dial it in more. But typically, what I say is, if you ask for $7,000, very rarely will we not spend that.
Right.
If you can get more than that, because that's a pretty big ask, right? So if you can get more than that, then let's talk about how we can spend it. Yeah. And typically we can, paying down MI, buying down the rate, something like that. Yeah.
So how do you normally like to see that worded for closing costs? I normally do, EITI, buyer's EITI.
On closing costs?
Yes.
On the offer itself,
On the offer itself. Yes.
seller to contribute 3%,
Of buyer's
or dollar figure to buyer.
Oh, closing costs?
And prepaid is what I normally do.
Yeah, sorry, PIP, I was thinking payment. Either way, it's clearer to me, and I think to sellers when it's a dollar amount. And oftentimes I get where, like on this program, the buyer has 3.5% and that's it, right? So we're asking for the full amount, so this is all they have to bring in. And sometimes that involves raising the price of the house, right? Well, I want to net this.
Yeah, normally I'll do a dollar amount, but I'll say up to. That's why.
I don't need to see up to, I'll spend it. I mean, as came up earlier, it just goes back to the seller if we don't spend it.
Yeah, even if that wording's not on there, it goes, brings it right to the seller. So, this gives you an idea of the comparison between an FHA rate and conventional interest rate. And this is, okay, you base this on 650 again.
Right, so this again is why this borrower is going FHA, right? Because of their 650 credit score. And this is what we're gonna learn next week when I talk about what's your rate today and why anyone that answers that is either doesn't know what they're doing or they're being misleading. So on an FHA loan at 5%, we are giving the borrower 900 on this loan amount or on this purchase price, $993 towards their closing costs, right? So we can pair that, or we can take a higher rate and get more money, and pair that with any seller contribution you're getting, so they're only bringing in the 3.5%. 5%, that's what they're getting. On a conventional loan at 5%, they are paying $4,829 for that rate. Follow that? Almost a $6,000 cost difference for the rate because of the FICO score.
So these things like this is why the online loan apps are really disingenuous to the client, because you're not able to talk through scenario. You're just taking, just spitting out a whatever on the other end. It may not be in their best interest.
Right. So what's your rate today? What's your best rate on a 30-year fix today? 3.875. Awesome. I want that. Okay, bring the extra $15,112 to closing. That's not going to be a problem, is it? Right. So I won't get too much into this today. We'll go deep into this next week. But this is what, again, you don't have to decide that they're FHA or not FHA, right? Put that in our hands. But this is why we're going to have this person go FHA. It's going to save them money. Okay?
And a lot of times on the purchase sale agreement, it'll say if it's going to be FHA or conventional, but that's typically if you had your person pre-qualified, pre-approved. So.
Well, and you need to, because if you change loan programs during the transaction, guess what you need? Seller approval. And given it their discretion, they don't have to give approval. So you have to be very careful with that you do this is why you want to get buyers approved and through this process ahead of time, because once you write that offer, they're there unless, because if you're a seller and I get an offer at FHA and I only want to change to conventional or vice versa and I get a backup offer that's much better, no, I'm not going to cooperate on anything. I hope you terminate because I want this backup offer. So you just want to make sure you lock in with what you're really going to want to stick with.
Or just put us as the lender and then we'll switch it to whatever works best.
You still can't do it. So it's just approve it.
Well, it depends how you write. If you write it that it's FHA, correct?
Yes. Yeah. But we have to check a box, FHA or conventional.
Yeah.
And if we check FHA, you can't go to conventional without seller approval or vice versa. I can't even change lenders without their approval.
When you write the lender on.
Yeah.
Keep in mind too, we've got that fast track pre-approval, which is a full pre-approval. I mean, it's
approval. Don't say pre.
Approval. It's an approval.
It's through underwriting, basically.
Yes. Yep.
That's why, I should say, that's one of the biggest But when they we're writing off and they said, then we'll figure out the topics.
Right, so good realtors don't let them do that. And the other thing is, even as the buyer's agent, that we wrote the offer with this lender is important. And I'll tell you why. Because you have people, and they're the same people that don't appreciate what you do, that don't appreciate what we do, right? And they're at the end, they're like, well, just switch. Well, I saw online, rates or whatever. It's like, well, first of all, they're not for you. And secondly, you're not making your close date, or you're not, that's not happening. Right. But not many agents stand up to that, because they don't want to, rock the boat with their buyer, right? So it's important to just say, and if they're having misgivings in the beginning, that's when you find out. Don't have me write 8 pre-approval letters over the weekend and all that, and then say you saw something lower online. I'll be like, online was not writing you a letter so that you get this home. Online did not call a listing agent and tell them that you're qualified. Online did not that. So even if it's real, it doesn't matter, but it's probably not real.
There's a lot of people out there who don't value realtors, and like you said, they just, you take a bunch of money. But underneath that current of that, there's this trusted advisor thing that people feel. And so when you're working with the buyers, it's really important. I want to make you as strong as possible to get this. It's a hard market to get an offer accepted. I need you to go through the paces on the pre-approval stuff so we get the best deal for you, make it the strongest we can. Call these people, right? And get through the process so I know what we're dealing with. And that's the trusted advisor part. So you want to kind of, I think as realtors, you kind of downplay that really quickly, like, okay. And we kind of, like you say, we sort of take it, going to rock the boat. But it's okay to advise.
Right.
We'll take the quicker one, but I want to give you some advice. Or whatever it was, the rock up loan. Have they looked at FHA? I know they look at your score and give you something spit out the other end, but have they sat down with, showed you the options and what it's actually going to cost? Because there's literally endless options this can put together to your benefit. Have they done that? Likely not. But you might want to sit down, in addition to the quicker one, sit down with somebody, because once we write this offer, there's a likelihood you cannot change. You can't come back later and say, well, just change to a better program, but you can't. Right here in this agreement, that becomes a trusted advisor. You're advising them, showing them what's there so they know what they're in for, because they think they know it all. They think they know our job. They don't. That's right. What we're here for. Right?
And as a listing agent, if you have multiple offers and one's from Quicken or Wells Fargo or somebody else you can't get a hold of, versus from a local knowledgeable person who calls you as the listing agent and says, hey, you have a pre-approval, with my name on it. I want you to know that I've actually met with these people. I've run their credit. We've got them qualified or approved.
I had that discussion
ideally,
yesterday.
fast track. Which offer is going to be stronger, right? So you know that as a listing agent. So let your borrowers know that. Say that's fine, and you got it from Quicken and whatever, and Quicken closes a lot of loans. So I'm not here to tell you they never get it done, right? But everybody in the industry knows they're harder to work with, and if you need things done, it's difficult to get them done, right? So that's the advice Paul's talking about. Let people know that. Here's why you should consider something else. Your offer might not get accepted simply because of it.
And if you do, you could miss critical time frames that could jeopardize the whole transaction.
Yeah.
There's nothing more fun than having an underwriter that's in New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or anybody you need an answer from, right?
Well, and then it's also nice to make a personal relationship with your lender because, like yesterday, I talked with the listing agent that called me on this transaction that was written up. And, so it's an opportunity for us to talk you up and for you guys to talk us up too. I mean, this is like this one gal that I work with a lot. She'll literally have her clients call me even if they're pre-approved someplace else. I mean, she's just like, you need to call this girl because, we want to make sure that it's all done. And that's totally fine. I mean, I don't get all of those, but it gives people, something to compare. And if they're brothers, sisters, aunts, a loan officer, then obviously they're going to get it. But, that's everybody deals with that. So these are the loan limits. FHA does not have any restricted area like the USDA loans do. So FHA has the loan limit, and you can see for Portland, it's $474,950. That's pretty good. That's pretty
Almost
darn
as
good.
high as conventional, which is another 10,000.
Yeah.
And then notice the difference as well, right? So I'll tell you, first time buyer, if you can find them a duplex and you can do FHA great way to go.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard,
Awesome.
but it's a great way to go. We can count that rent as income for them.
The
They
projected
can
rent,
qualify.
Projected rent.
Yep.
How long of projected rent do you need, or like rent history?
Now we get a rent schedule with the appraisal, and the appraiser says the other unit will rent for X.
Oh, you don't
That's
even
what
have
we
to have a
use.
rental history
Right.
then? Okay.
So yeah, that helps out hugely. Huge. So, are you guys surprised that the loan limits are that high for the
Yes.
prices?
Yeah.
That'd be good. So basically, since FHA does have the mortgage insurance, I kind of view it as a stepping stone to get borrowers into their house. I mean, they've got to live somewhere. They may as well be building equity, get their credit, looking really good. And then they have the option to refinance in a couple of years, and hopefully they'll be able to show preferably a 20% equity position and completely get rid of the mortgage insurance. So that's kind of what we're looking at there, because they don't want to keep that mortgage insurance forever. It's expensive and there's no need for it. So anyway, if you've got anybody that is looking for low down payment and buy a house, then FHA is a good option for you guys.
When we talk about how flexible it is, if you all were in the business after the crash, and the the word, gosh, it's been away so long. The industry calls it non-prime. The crappy loans.
Subprime.
The subprime loans went away, right? They just flat went away. FHA became the default in the industry for many years after that, because it's so much more forgiving in the amount of down payment, the debt to income ratio, the credit score where you don't get hammered. It really became the go-to product. It became very, very popular. So much so that HUD looked at it and they were getting way more of the market that they wanted. And as a result of that, that's why they did some things like made the mortgage insurance so that it never goes away. That didn't used to be the case. It was when you paid the original balance down to 78% of what it went away naturally. But they've made some changes to it because frankly they don't want, that much of the purchase market. But it's designed, the whole idea is to open up home ownership opportunities to people who don't otherwise qualify. That's the mission of FHA and HUD, right? So as you're thinking about, restricted amounts of income on that debt to income ratio, not great credit scores, not much down payment, right? This is probably going to be the program that ends up being the best fit for them. Back on the earlier slide, it had the wrong wrong credit score on there where it said 650, and I'm going to say Lori went in and changed mine.
I did not.
So most investors only take down to a 620. And what I mean by that is we call investors banks. They're the ones that buy the loans, right, that are going to be servicing it. Every bank has overlays that they say, yes, we'll take FHA, but only down to a 620 or a 640 credit score. At Cross Country, we're a direct seller to HUD, meaning we underwrite it to the FHA guidelines themselves, which is 580 for the credit score.
Which
So
is pretty low.
it's very low. I have a affectionate name for those loans. Rhymes with dog hit. But we can do them in-house, right? We don't have to send that out to some brokered program, which is really nice to have.
So that is actually everything that I had as far as the FHA presentation. Do you guys have any questions or anything like that? Any of them?
The big so what for me is work harder with your buyers, get them referred from somebody that's local and reputable. And they're right here in the building. They did a great job. Give them a shot. Did a really good job.
We could do a whole class on, again, I've been doing this a very long time, and so have many of you, over how to refer and why, right? So how is easy. There's lots of scripts on how to refer, right? But when it comes to the why, so one of the things that I've heard a lot, and maybe some of you have worked at real estate offices where they're like, you have to get free cards, you have to give free, or else it's a violation. First of all, it's not a violation. Nobody's ever gotten in trouble for referring a lender. If you're getting something
from that lender, if you're getting paid or something, that's a problem. But if you're referring a lender because they'll do a great job, that's not a problem. To me, what I see, the biggest reason is, Paul's talking about trusted advisor. You raise your level in their eyes by saying, hey, you can use whoever you want. I recommend that you talk to Lori or Ryan or Eric because I know they do a great job and I know they'll take care of you and it'll get done, right? So take that, if you're on the receiving end of that advice versus, I don't really care who you use, look on the internet, here's 3 cards, go call these people. They're already in a stressful situation trying to buy a home. You got to find them a house. You just gave them more homework to do, right? Instead of taking homework off of their list and giving them something, you've made more work for them. You've made it more stressful. And the nice thing, real quick, Flo, the nice thing about that, so we all have people we've worked with over time, is then at every opportunity I can say, oh, gosh, you're one of Paul's clients. You know, maybe he's already told me I'm going to hear from you. Love working with Paul. He does a great job. Part of the reason we work, you know, so well together is, you know, we're going to put your interest first. But I can talk you up every single time I have a conversation with that client, and I do, right? So it relieves the stress on the client so much instead of, I don't care who you use, you know, check around on the internet. I heard there was a dancing somebody and they said there's a new plan and it said that rates are, you know, 1.75%. Yeah, and then they got to go do all the due diligence. So we would love it to be us, right? But develop that relationship with somebody where you can do that and make the transaction.
It's harder in this day and age when people are whatever.
Yeah.
But how important is that? I mean, really, when you start thinking about all the potential programs, so what's the interest rate? Come on.
Yeah.
3.875.
What is the first thing a buyer wants to do though? What's the first thing a buyer wants to do? I want to look at a house. I don't know if I can afford it. I went online to my little app, to my little whatever, and it says, I think I can afford this. Okay, let's dial it back and let's figure that out, because I don't want you to go show homes and disappoint you. But we also might be able to do better for you, but he who has the gold makes the rules, and lenders have the gold, right? So we got to make sure that we know how much gold you can get.
Well, not only that, I mean, if they go and see more of a house than what they can afford, it's going to make your job so much harder, because everything else they see after that is just going to look like a, a terrible home, like a shack. So yeah, and it's just going to make your job a lot harder if you don't get a, pre-approved.
And we see that a lot, and we see the opposite of that as well, where people are like, I only want to spend $2,000 a month on my house payment. That's all I want to spend. And they might qualify for a lot more than that. And what they want to spend is important. What I always tell clients is, just because I can get you a loan doesn't mean it makes sense. We only care that you make your house payment. If you like to do other things, you might want to consider that, right? But oftentimes, they just have a number in their head. I want it to be no more than X. Well, you take them out and you show them a few homes, right? And the difference between 2,000 and 2,100 is another $25,000 in house that they're buying. And at some of the price points, that's a big difference, right? A $25,000 more expensive house, but it's only $100 in their payment. And they might go, I qualify for that. I didn't really want to do it, but $100 for this house versus these homes, and you end up actually selling them a more expensive house.
And then also they don't think about the tax benefits that they have of home ownership versus renting too. So you have to let them know that you're actually paying more, but you're actually not.
Best loan is the one, right? It's all kind of irrelevant if the house doesn't close, right? And Flo, you had a question.
Yeah, I have a lot of buyers right now. So some of them are like, oh, I don't want my credit to be full, whatever. But they're always paranoid to, like, I always try to get them over. And then they work with so-and-so, whatever. And then so I get introduced with their loan officers, and they have, it's like, let's just find out first and whatever. And then,
So,
and because, they don't want them to be switched over because they don't want to be pulled their credit score again.
So they really don't want to buy a house?
right. Yeah. So if anybody's giving you, saying somebody's pre-approved and they haven't run their credit, then that's just as good as
No, they have.
Oh, but it's been run once?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I do my spill because I always like to work with people I know.
Right.
I don't want to bank or whatever.
Right. So it has, a guy called me the
said, I don't want you to run my credit because somebody just did and it dropped it 30 points. And I said, no, it didn't. And he's like, no, it did. I'm like, no, it didn't. And so we argued back and forth, and I proved to him that you missed a payment, something happened, but it did not drop it 30 points. So the total amount that goes into that is very, very small. So I think that if you're applying for a bunch of credit, I think Lorraine addressed it on her credit class. I think the most it can go down is like 4 or 5 points total, and that's not going to be if you have 2 or 3 lenders pull your credit. It's not going to be. It's set up so that somebody can reasonably shop, right? So if it's run within a specific window, it's not going to have any effect, right? And they might say, well, when you ran it, it was this, and you ran it, it was this.
You see that
well,
Credit Karma commercial?
Your balances are different every day. There's all that stuff in there, but that is so overblown. Yes, you don't want people randomly running your credit, but if you're trying to make a smart decision on something as kind of as important as a house, right? It's not going to lower your credit.
You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's where you want to be shopping. I would say that if you get under a contract and they're trading down the path with a lender, don't go out and pull a credit after that. Right? Don't go buying cars and don't get the credit for credit cards. That's where you want to.
No, an important part on that is we look at the credit again at the end. Every lender does, right? So people go, oh, they ran my credit, I'm fine, and then they'll go apply for new credit. Well, that gets seen. Every lender.
That's what I mean. So it's after you're under contract is where you don't want to do that.
Right. Every lender at the end does a soft pull, and they see if new credit was applied for. So even if it wasn't taken out, we can't see that, right? But if it was applied for, so I've had people, and I tell everybody, don't change your credit profile, right? Don't. If you're going to go shop me and go with another lender, that's fine, because we can explain mortgage shopping didn't open other credit, right? But if you go out and you get a Macy's card, so you can save 15% on new shoes, right? We have to document that new credit before we can close. Before you can buy your house, we have to prove how much you owe Macy's on this new card. You might go, that's ridiculous. It might be, but it's open credit. So what happens is you pulled it in that window, you haven't received the bill yet, right? So we can't just go, here's how much I owe Macy's. So you have to go through, jump through all the hoops to define what that credit is and what you owe. Because it's new credit that was applied for and opened after we pulled your application. So it can hold up the sale of your house.
The TV is not helping with that because Credit Karma has that commercial guys going, no, don't check my credit score in Credit Karma because he thinks it's going to, but it's not unique to Credit Karma. It doesn't affect, matter of fact, that's the time to shop with your credit score.
There's a 30-day time period where it won't hit your credit.
But there's certain tricks you can really raise your. My interest rate went up almost. My credit score went up by like 90 points by simply putting my 3 credit cards with a 1/3 balance and putting them all on auto pay. So the 1/3 balance is the magic thing where that makes you look like there's something about that that really increases your credit score. So there's things you can do to offset and play the game.
And you want them talking to somebody who knows what they're doing, because things that are intuitive are wrong. So a lot of people go, I've got 5 credit cards, right? And they each have a $5,000 balance. So I'm gonna close them all, get one with a $25,000 balance, and put it all on that card.
Now it's maxed.
Or maybe before they all had $10,000 limits, so you're using half of your credit. Well, they wanted to consolidate things, put it all in one place. Now you're maxed out. They just killed their credit. I mean, that'll knock it down 30 points.
Well, just having that open revolving credit available to you is bad for your scores.
No, it's helpful.
Is it helpful?
Having open credit
with about a 1/3 balance is helpful.
So below 50%, below 30%, below 10% of those balances is where those get fixed. So when you consolidate it all on one, you just hurt your credit score.
Now you're maxed.
So you're saying that if, like, say there was a credit card that had $25,000 limit that you could spend, and you keep it at a 1/3.
I keep mine at about a 1/3.
Okay.
So
that doesn't
25 to
hurt
30%.
you because now it's showing you got $25,000.
No, but it's showing that you're responsible with your credit.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And you have available credit, right? So you're not just right up against the limit where problems can happen and you're not going to be able to make your house payment.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. But if you max one card, it looks like you're irresponsible max everything out, you don't make it happen.
What about balance transfers, taking it from one credit card to another
That
one
works.
for zero interest
Absolutely.
rates versus, you know, I mean, your debt is the same, right?
You just,
But it's,
yeah, you
just
have to look
gone
at
up.
what you've done on that one, right? So
Yeah.
if you max out the one that you
Yeah.
just transferred to, that's gonna hurt you.
Okay.
Not as much as if you do it and then cancel the other one.
The point in all
Yeah,
this,
don't close out your credit cards.
the real point of all this is why you wanna hook up with someone that they can look them in the eyes typically, not just on the phone, because like your clients are under misunderstanding that it's gonna hurt them. No, it's actually fine. But don't do these, but you hook up with someone locally, don't worry about the credit pull because it's not gonna affect your score but a point or two maybe.
So you just said don't close credit cards.
Yeah.
So I have a couple from like years ago that I never closed them. What happens if you do close them?
It hits your credit score.
So there's two things. Length of credit history helps your score. So the longer an account has been open, the better. That helps your score. That's positive. And second is whatever that is, say it's a Payless shoe store account, right? And there's a 250 limit. That's 250 more of available credit that you have in the whole algorithm.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. So
Now, at some point it becomes, there's life too, right? I mean, you don't want to have all this stuff that complicates your life. But we have people all the time where we see it and it's like, gosh, can you pay this down? No, I can't pay it down. So here's another trick. Ask them to raise your credit limit, right?
Now, it looks like you paid it.
Then it looks
Okay,
like,
yeah.
because so there are all types of things like this that once we see it, we can help them with. Now, the fact of the matter, most people whose credit scores are low, if it's not that their balances are maxed out, that's easy for us to see. It's that they have late payments. We can't do anything about late payments. Only time helps late payments, right? And sometimes people will complain to me about that. I'm like, that's the point of the whole thing, right? We see that you have a history of not paying your lender. Therefore, your interest rate is going to be higher than somebody who has a history
There's a
of
risk you may not pay up.
paying their lender on time. You know, whatever that lender is, your car payment, your student loan, whatever. People might not want to hear it, but that's the reason they're in that boat. And there's all kinds of, legitimate sob stories too, right? I was late for this 3-month period of time because I lost my job and couldn't make the payments.
Or I was in the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, so there's stuff there, but sometimes it's just, I didn't know any better. Well, now you do, but you're paying.
Right. That's why you wanna look at FHA.
That's
Back
back to
3.5 years ago, I went and did that, put about a third, 25 to, I had like 4 cards. And I readjusted them all, increased the credit light rates, and that to make them all look at about 25 to 30% balance owed. And my score was literally like 90 points. I gained.
Interesting.
Seriously.
Okay.
Well, and didn't take like 2 months. I was like, oh my gosh, it was shocking. Now I go to credit card and check all the time. I'm like, oh, 800.
I know, I do that
All
too.
the time.
And one thing, just so you know, I'm really glad that as a society we're talking about credit score and all that a lot more now, right? People are aware of it more because nobody teaches us this stuff, right? Unless we happen to have parents in the industry or something, right? It doesn't get taught in school or anything. So I like that it's on everybody's radar. What I don't like is you pull my credit and it goes way down. That's like the #1 misnomer out there. And the second thing is, well, no, my score is a 900. I'm looking at it on whatever, right? And it's like all those scoring mechanisms, just understand, are different than what the mortgage industry uses. And people will argue with me. They're like, no, it's 900, and I'm like, well, the FICO for mortgage only goes to 843, so it's not, right? It's probably good, but if that's on a scale of 1 to 10,000, then maybe it's not so good. So I need to pull your credit. I can't approve you based on what Credit Karma or your Discover bill says or any of those things because it's a different model.
And it's the same with like auto insurance as well. That industry, the insurance industry, they have their own.
They have their own.
They use credit to your insurance rates too.
Yes, they do.
Here's the other thing about FHA too it's 3 years out of bankruptcy and foreclosure? Or 2 years? 2 years only FHA for.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and with the conventional, I think it's 5, isn't it?
Where's short sale for?
I'm sorry?
Yeah,
What about short sale?
I think it's also 2. Does that sound right?
Wow.
I think
You said foreclosure is 2 years?
No, because I sent that stuff to you, remember?
You said 3 years.
Yeah, the foreclosure is 3 years. of it.
foreclosure's 3. Okay, maybe it's a short sale that's 2 or bankruptcy that's 2. Yeah. It's less than conventional. Again,
Yeah, much
the
less.
whole idea of FHA from HUD is to let more people qualify for homes and buy homes.
More.
And if you have clients that just don't think that they're gonna qualify for whatever the reason, have them talk to us and we'll put together a game plan to help them. Whether it's right now or 6 months down the road or a year down the road, we're gonna put together a game plan so that they can be buyers eventually.
We work with lots of people for years, 2-3 years in advance before they ever buy a house.
A lot of people say they don't qualify, they think they don't qualify because they're just afraid to ask. They're too embarrassed to just ask.
I've heard that many times from clients, and it's like, well, it never hurts to try. You might be surprised.
I keep looking at my watch because I want to give you all your full credit hour. So I keep looking at Kim and doing that.
We're past that, we're good.
Oh, are we good now?
Yeah, we're way good.
Okay.
Flo, do you have another question?
If you have a good reason for foreclosure, it's that you're getting close to their end date with FHA, with HUD.
Like a letter of
So let me just say, your clients will go on and they'll read on the HUD website that there is an exception for extenuating circumstances. So they'll read that.
Okay.
But let me just tell you that theirs is not an extenuating circumstance.
I've never had one.
They never get approved. Like never. Everybody thinks their thing is an extenuating circumstance. And some of them we would all agree, right? I've never seen one.
Some lenders say, oh yeah, write a letter, and I say, oh, yeah, I don't think so, and
Right.
it's like, you're gonna waste my client's time.
Yeah.
And give a false hope, and that,
Never seen one done. I have heard of a medical payments one where that has worked. I've heard of it. I don't know. One thing we can do now
VA
is,
allows letters of explanation. Do they still?
I'm sorry?
VA?
Well, everyone allows letters of explanation, but getting an exception to go within that that negative event window, just we don't see it happen.
Okay.
Yeah. We do see where it didn't used to be where if one spouse had given up a home in a divorce and the problems all happened after that, if they were still on title, it didn't matter, right? But now that's something that we get if that negative stuff happened after they officially legally gave up the home, and we can prove that even if they were still on title, that does work.
If anyone has to go, you can, we're just chit-chatting.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Did you ever get that fixed for your thing I talked about years ago, remember?
Which one?
Is on your house, it was on your house.
Oh.
Did you ever
No, you know what? Title went ahead, they just had me sign something. Where I was cleaning that. And yeah. I know, so you gotta look at the.
There's education.
My writing was that I write in. So when I first started, I never typed, but I got it wet and it was perfect.
No, it's.
So yeah, my writing are all
They're just open to this.
well, and these are like
Yeah.
soft. No. These are like soft buttons, but my other ones, they're rubber soles right here and on the heels so that for the stirrups, because I have in my stirrups on the inside are rubber.
And so then